Hello everyone, thank you. Thank you to Australian Mineral Fertilisers for the opportunity to be here. I've had the privilege of spending a few hours with Tom in the last couple of months, and it's really absolutely lovely to be back in the Great Southern. I am very fortunate to have actually lived in the Great Southern for 10 years as part of my own journey and life, and that was in the amazing place of Bremer Bay. A little bit windy at times, but it was Bremer. And Tom asked me to speak about Triple R. What is the Triple R? The Triple R is rural, regional and remote women and my role with them. I'm actually chair of the Rural, Regional and Remote Women's Network, and we have a community of approximately 7,500 across the state. In comparison, the CWA, who you may have members here today, is an amazing organisation. There are about 4,500 nationally, I believe. So the Triple R is a networking and support group. We connect. We recently did some strategic planning and some navel gazing, some stargazing, and then asked our community, what is it that is important to you? And I'm going to touch on some of those. So I have been very, very fortunate in my life, and I'm going to share some of those experiences. What's important to me? People. People are everything. Without the people, there's nothing. If you get the people right in a business, the rest will come. So when we are looking after healthy soils and healthy people, if we get our health right, both mental and physical, we can move mountains. So I'll just slick back. My business is called Belay Consulting. It's very deliberate. To belay is to climb a mountain with secured support. So if you picture an ice pick and rope, another ice pick, more rope, another ice pick and on, that is to belay. Or to be an anchor point. Don't know if anyone's brave enough to have been abseiling. Yes? Well done. Me, no, yet. But I hope to have a turn soon. So it's a very deliberate choice of words in my consulting business. So my family are very important. I have 3 amazing children. They're not teenagers anymore, so I had to think for a minute. And a very supportive husband who we have worked together in a variety of businesses, and that has given me a lot of experiences now in my own consulting business to bring to the fore when people say, we can't do this or we can't do that. And I'll say, well, you kind of probably can, just give it a go. So my story, I grew up on a wheat and sheep farm in the Central Midlands, which is about Gillingarra, tiny little community. There were 8 kids at my school in 7 years. I was the only one in year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 7. So when I went to the big high school in Mora, it was like, oh my gosh, I nearly drowned. There were 300 students there. I had a lovely time there and then went to boarding school for the last couple of years and learnt a lot about resilience, how to put the 20-cent pieces in the phone and not actually have to pay for the phone call. I was very fortunate to be an exchange student, and I would recommend it to parents of children who may be in that space. However, just be gentle with them when they come home. I took a little while to settle down. I was in small town America. I had been treated like a Cinderella, and I was very fortunate that I had a few friends and cousins to bring me back down to earth fairly well, fairly quickly when I got back. Lived in the metro area for a while and worked for the Pastoralists and Graziers Association, and then what's now Tourism WA. While I was at Tourism WA, it was about a 4.5-year period, and I was incredibly fortunate to work in an area called product development. So I sold holidays to this amazing state that we've got. I used to organise all the journalism and tourism familiarisation visits to Western Australia for the government, and got to even escort them in a nice way, and got to take people to all over this amazing state, including the Great Southern. Then I swore I would never, ever, 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 ever marry a farmer. One of my last slides has got never say never. So I met Neil, married him, moved to Bremer Bay, and the rest is history kind of thing. So I jumped into the community. It was I think Bremer's about 550 k's from Perth, and it took me a little while to adjust, but then the community was so lovely that they embraced me, and we hit the ground running. I see a few familiar faces, whether it's from the Boxwood Hills Hockey Club days, right up to Newdigate. We're always the last ones to leave to come home, or Ongerup or around. And however, after about a few tough years, we made a decision to sell the farm at Bremer and move to Beverley. So that opened up a whole new world. Our farming at Bremer had been superfine wool. We had 15 micron superfine wool, and it was used for Italian suiting and lingerie. So it was in demand. We were very fortunate, and with my background in marketing, actually managed to help my husband sell the wool differently to how he had done that in the past. We moved to Beverley in the wheat belt, and after having, I wrote down a couple of things that we'd been doing at Bremer: the superfine wool, Angus cattle, we had a crack at seed potatoes, certified seed potatoes, and also wine grapes. And at the time, everybody laughed at us and said, this will never work, it'll never work, it'll never work. One of my proudest moments in the last couple of years is going to Nornbutt Wines, where one of the people who were involved in the trial, a gentleman called Max Wellstead with his wife Maree, actually developed the vineyard. So yay Bremer, and go Max and Maree. And we also had lambs, so we had a lamb feedlot. So we picked up lock, stock and barrel. We had one child and, well, two, one was 3 weeks old, moved to Beverley, and that was quite a different way of farming, but it wasn't dissimilar to what I'd grown up with. So Neil had quite an adjustment, and I just got used to the hot weather again. Beverley was great. We were there for 11 years, and sometimes opportunities come up. So we actually ended up selling that farm again and going around Australia. And I've got a photo of what we did going around Australia coming up. After that, while I was there, I was actually tapped on the shoulder by someone about going on a board. And I sort of said, I was about 32, why me? And he said, think you can do it? Okay, you got a few kids, you'll be right. It's just, a few meetings a year. So I put forward my CV, jumped in lock, stock and barrel. And that Just Have a Go board was the Rural Business Development Corporation. So some of you may have heard of FarmBiz or RAFCOR or that sort of, those sort of names. That was what that board was. So I was on that board for 11 years. I was very fortunate as a training ground to learn about governance and strategy at a fairly high level as a ministerial appointment. And what we did was develop policy and planning for government, and I'm very proud to look back to see a number of those, the policy and planning that we put forward have actually become what's actually happening around the place. And then the Peel region. So where to next? We were no fixed address after coming back from our lovely trip around Australia, and the business we'd been negotiating fell through at the last minute, and we didn't have a plan B. So I'm very much about a plan B and a plan C. Some people agree with that, some people don't. I still think you need a plan B, but you can choose what you want to do. So we now live in the Peel region. So a little bit about me there. I've sat on a lot of boards and committees. I realised that my thing that floats my boat and that I like to do is to get involved in communities. And a way to do that and a way to meet people is either get involved in sport, which I was never very good at. I was always the team player or the goalie in the hockey team when no one else wanted to be goalie, or the manager. So, but I absolutely believe in how sport can break down barriers, and it's been an absolute blessing to my family and my children for that to happen. So I was on the RBDC, we'd sold our farm, we'd had a lovely time around Australia, we'd come back and gone, oh my God, now what do we do? We were living in a bus, basically, and a shed, and it was 42 degrees in Beverley. And I said, we've got a beach house. I think I'm going to go and live down there. So that's how we ended up in the Peel region. While I was there and in the time of selling the farm, I was very keen to go to university. I'd had 2 goes at it in my earlier years and I wasn't ready. So I was told to go and think about it as well. And anyway, I ended up signing up through UWA, had to jump through a few hoops to get into it, and It was a very big learning curve to jump in and learn how to study at 43. So it was only last week, really. We did that as a cohort of 18. There were 18 of us in 20 months. It felt like we were being put through a sausage pipe every second weekend. The best thing about it was there was no exams, because that's not my strong point. But I learnt so much, and in the middle of that, I had an aha moment of what I wanted to do when I grew up. So at 43, I decided that. And so please be kind to your children as they're coming along and thinking about what they want to do. And Belay Consulting was born, and that was about helping farmers and the agricultural business community do business better, to market themselves, to be more strategic, to get in front of the market and position themselves, because ultimately I believe everybody in the business knows the answer. It's just a matter of opening the doors or finding the right people to connect to. I now am chair of the Rural Regional Remote Women's Network, very proudly. The last couple of years have been quite challenging as chair of that organisation, and that's because the Department of Regional Development had a budget cut from 250,000 down to 60, and it's really hard to save the world in 3 meetings a year and putting out a few magazines. However, one of the most important things that we did was to survey our people, as I mentioned earlier, and interestingly, the 3 main challenges that rural women face are education, employment and health, underpinned by telecommunications and childcare. So Sarah mentioned earlier, and thank you, Sarah, that was a really, really nice presentation. Sarah mentioned earlier about women doing things for themselves so that they can get better and improve on their own professional development and personal development. So it's interesting, 20 years ago the same problems were here. Maybe it's generational, maybe it's actually up to us to do something more about it. I'm also a board member of the Peel Development Commission, very proudly, and more recently chair of Southwestern Wireless WA, which is about bringing fixed wireless internet connectivity to Western Australia and rural WA. So rural women. Sabrina has touched on it several times about being the change agents. Women and rural women are recognised as being just that. I find rural women inspirational, vibrant, incredibly talented, and the extra in the extraordinary. We are ably supported by our male counterparts, but we also have a way and find ways to get the job done. And even if it's finding 5 minutes to get the job done that needs to be done. But we can't do it without our guys. So one of the really important things I think that we need to do as a community, both men and women, is find people to help and support. Pay it forward. I will touch on that soon. So women, find a male to mentor, particularly a young male. I was so impressed when I met Tom and thought, this is the kind of guy that we, older people like me, need to help support into the future, because he gets it, he cares, and he wants to make a difference. So if we all took 1 or 2 of that generation, your generation, and help them in their journey, the world will be a better place. I'm not going to talk about miscongeniality and world peace and all that sort of thing, but I do really believe it. Rural women are also the glue. I grew up on a farm. My mum ran the sheep. There was 4 kids. We just all tagged along or helped or did or whatever. And Dad was a dipping contractor, and as well as shearing and farming as well. So they've built a nice, tidy little farming empire up in Gillingarra, and of which my younger brother is now taking over. But without my mum as one of my most important role models, I wouldn't be able to do what I do. And the other one is my mother-in-law, which, excuse me, it's quite... It's not very often you can say something positive about your mother-in-law. But I am very fortunate. I have, so my mum is Kay Kelly and Maree Gooch, 2 very instrumental women, very, very different in what they did in the family and the community and in the farming businesses that they were involved with. But they were the glue, and without them, we wouldn't be here. So Belay Consulting. I feel I am the luckiest person in the world. Maybe Sabrina feels she is too. So my business is about teaching and training people. So I get the incredible opportunity more recently to speak to a number of different groups of people about change management, planning, and making more profits. So I have a little rule of thumb in my head when I work with clients about how much profit I want them to make, and generally within 6 to 18 months they're there. So again, I believe the people in the business know the answers. It's just a matter of opening up, turning on the lights. One of the projects that I do is with FarmSafe WA Alliance, not WorkSafe. Please don't everybody fall off your chairs. WorkSafe are the Department of Commerce and Compliance, and FarmSafe WA are the advocacy and support group. And I'm really pleased to see a few members here today. Thank you, Sarah, John, Michelle. We are the leading dryland farmers in the world. We might not have the same dirt as the Sahara, but we have been doing some really good things in agriculture. However, I do agree that it's time for change and it's time to take stock of where we are. It's really interesting, the difference of 0.1% in the pH change in a soil can incredibly increase or decrease production. So if you're not taking soil tests or doing soil tests, I absolutely encourage you to do that. This is what the most people face, I think, when they come to farm safety. So that small, that the words say, you'll have some paperwork to catch up on. If I'm not back in 2 days, organise a search and rescue team. So just going back one, I immersed myself in FarmSafe WA about 18 months ago, and that was the information, just some of the information that I found that I have been wading through. So what FarmSafe WA is all about is helping farmers, service providers and the ag industry get up to speed on all things to do with farm safety, compliance. And there's 3 things you need to remember: legislation, legislation, legislation. If you don't cover your tails, you could lose your farm. I'll share some examples later. I often hear it's going to take too long. The words are on the screen. Which family member can you afford to lose? I don't want to lose any of mine or friends. And I'm sorry if I'm touching on some sore points for people, because everybody has been connected in some way to an accident or a fatality. It's going to cost too much. What price do you put on your time? It's not going to make us any more money. Well, actually, if we stop and think, maybe it is. So, income and profits is price times yield, take input costs is profit. 1% increase in production can have a 10% impact on your operating surplus. It's a rule of thumb of finance. 1% decrease in input costs, using variable input costs as an example, can have a 16% impact on your operating surplus. This is not rocket science, it's what the banks all use. So if you increase your production by 1% and decrease your input cost by 1%, it's 26%, up to 26% impact on your operating surplus. Using our $4 billion grain industry here, 1% increase in productivity is $40 million. So those of you that are in livestock, think about 1% up, 1% down and what it could make. So I have got some information here from WorkSafe. We do work closely with WorkSafe. This is a checklist, and I've got copies of these if you would like to take them home. I would encourage you to spend a few hours going through these and just fill it in, because if you've got one of these, WorkSafe will look very kindly on you. So I'm just going to touch quickly on chemicals because FarmSafe WA last year joined with AusChem Training. So AusChem Training is about showing people accredited training through the TAFE colleges about chemical safety. So can you see the difference here and here? Oh, sorry, touchy. Can you see how it's different? Because this has been spray topped, and see what's happening over here. I'm just talking about profits. I'm not talking about chemicals as much as some others may. So, some grapevines. We have a number of grapevines in this area. They look beautiful as I was driving in. So, just going to show you the difference of spray drift. So these vines will, take a long time to get back, let alone what you might be drinking. And these vines are unaffected and healthy. So it's going to take too long. 4 hours out of your life, if not 2. It's going to cost more money. $20 for some gloves and a mask. Doesn't have to cost you $200,000. Sorry. It's not going to make us any more money. Just remember those 1%ers. This is a real fast track going through things. So FarmSafe WA, and I apologise, I'm very passionate about this. I nearly lost one of my kids through a number of instances, mainly involving a dam. And then we had a workman who nearly cut his arm off, or his arm was nearly cut off because of an exploding disc with an angle grinder, which are no longer used these days, and they all have covers on. This is going back quite a few years, and he nearly lost his arm. So it's personal to me, and I absolutely go on about it. So FarmSafe WA is about supporting farmers in making their workplace a safe environment through reduction and prevention of accidents and deaths, leading to improved productivity and well-being. And well-being is our health. Well-being is about the people. So planning for the future. Kate, at lunch, mentioned we can't do it overnight. We need to make change happen slowly, and we do, because that's how we are as people. You go to the physio, you have your muscles worked on. If you don't do something about it, your muscles go back to the same place. We're exactly the same. So we have to make change happen. And the discipline of execution and the discipline of input is very, very difficult, but we can do that. I have been very fortunate to be involved with a program that the Department of Ag and Food developed called Plan, Prepare and Prosper, and I've delivered it to about 400 farming businesses. When I go back and see those farming businesses a couple of years later and see what they've implemented because of change management and understanding what it is all about and making baby steps happen and then also amazing big things happen. I talked about the trip around Australia. So we bought a daggy old double-decker bus. We fitted it out like a Winnebago. We did 35,000 Ks in nearly 9 months, and we had a ball. So we couldn't have done any of that without planning. I encourage you as rural women to collaborate and connect. This was an event, I'm actually very proudly a member of Women in Farming Enterprises in Bali, but also I am part of Business Women Australia, and I deliberately joined that organisation to bring the country to the city and vice versa. So recently, some of you may see Kaylin Fletcher, who's in the black and white stripy top. Kaylin is the Rural Woman of the Year for Western Australia for 2016. She's currently in Brazil on a recce mission about tropical agriculture. She's one of the most vibrant, incredible ladies I've met, and I nominated her for this award. So she flew down from Kununurra and was in a group. There was probably about 160 people in the room. 40% were rural women. So in these pictures are women from Margaret River, Wongan, Mount Magnet, Pingaring, Southern Cross, and all in between, Kununurra, and all in between. So I think collaborate and connect is the best way for us to all make big impact happen for a small effort. Building relationships is really important. It's the way of business these days. It's the way of networking. Know your purpose. maybe take a moment as you go home today or tomorrow and think about what it is that you bring to the table going forward. So I'm not talking about business or agriculture. This is just primarily about you. Pay it forward. You'll have it come back to you 10 times more. And have fun. The most important thing, have fun. And I found this on Facebook. I don't go on Facebook. I do go on Facebook quite a bit, actually. You probably would see me. It's just like a big magazine, someone told me. So I thought, well, that's the nice way to keep in touch with what's going on. Don't let someone dim your light in what you do, in all that you do, because it's shining in their eyes. And most importantly, be the change that you want to see in the world. Thank you.